I don't care if the warranty expired in November. The bulbs are burnt out and I just want my refund. The woman on the phone sounded like she was talking through a wet sock. She started reciting some policy about seasonal wear and tear while I fought with a massive glittering knot of LED Christmas lights in the driver's seat of my Tahoe. Every time I pulled one strand, 3 more tightened. It was late October, but the Texas humidity still clung to everything, and my AC barely handled the glare coming off the Starbucks parking lot. I snapped. I didn't scream, but I told her in a very sharp voice that I wasn't hanging up until she found a manager. I leaned my head back against the headrest and left the phone on speaker. The representative kept droning on about a corporate office in another time zone. Beside me on the passenger seat, the family iPad flickered with a notification. I swiped it open just to kill the silence between the representative's scripted pauses. I saw a folder on the home screen labeled Derated Backups. It shouldn't have been there. I clicked it because I was frustrated and my head had been pounding since 6 a.m. Inside that folder, I found a series of PDFs from the last 18 months. I opened the first one. It was a loan agreement from a company called Rapid Credit Solutions with an interest rate in the high 20s. My stomach rolled when I saw the primary borrower. It wasn't Ronald. It was my 10-year-old son. The customer service rep finally mentioned a manager. But I stopped listening. I stared at the screen. My son doesn't have a bank account, let alone a credit line. I scrolled through the other files. I found 4 more. Different companies, all high interest, all using my children's social security numbers. The totals were staggering. I put the car in gear and drove home. I passed the outskirts of town where the rusted-out oil rigs stood. Half the town had been laid off in the last quarter. I saw it in the brown lawns and the fancy jewelry trucks sitting idle in driveways. For months, Ronald told me the layoffs hadn't touched his department. He came home every night, kissed me, complained about the commute, and told me not to worry about the budget. I had a voicemail on my phone from a number I didn't recognize. I played it 6-7 times. A robotic voice mentioned a final notice and a reference number, but it didn't give a name or a specific amount. It was too vague to prove anything. But I kept replaying it, hoping I'd hear a slip-up or a name that matched the PDFs. Late that night, while Ronald snored, I sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad. I did the mortgage math. I've done this every night for 3 months, adding up property taxes, insurance, and those massive truck payments. And the numbers never aligned. There was always a gap of a few $1,000s a month. I assumed I was bad at bookkeeping, or that the cost of living in a boomtown was just swallowing us. Now looking at those PDFs, the math worked. Ronald wasn't just spending us money. He was borrowing it against our children's futures to keep up the appearance of a life we couldn't afford. The following Saturday was my cousin Sarah's baby shower. It was an over-the-top affair at a country club, with linen napkins and dresses that cost more than my first car. I spent the morning in a state of vibrating tension. Maya, our 16-year-old babysitter, was helping me get the kids ready. She was acting strange, avoiding my eyes and fidgeting with her phone. An hour earlier, she'd been in the living room when Ronald left his phone face up on the coffee table. I saw her glance at the screen just as a text popped up, then she jumped back like she'd been shocked. She didn't say a word, but the way she looked at me, half pitying, half terrified, made me doubt my own sanity for a second. Alicia's, my mother-in-law, met me at the club. She wore a pale peach suit and held a glass of champagne. She looked like a woman whose family had never known a layoff. She hugged me and her perfume smelled like expensive soap. "You look tired, Alexandria," Alicia said. She pulled back to study my face. "Are you getting enough sleep? You have those bags under your eyes again." I stepped back and clutched my purse. "I'm fine, Alicia. Just a long week. You really should prioritize yourself," she replied. "Ronald mentioned you've been a bit high-strung lately. It's not good for the children." I looked over at Ronald. He stood near the buffet, laughing with a group of men in starched button-downs. He looked relaxed. He looked like a man who didn't have 5 predatory loans tied to his children's identities. When he saw me looking, he didn't wave. He shifted his weight and turned back to the conversation, using his shoulder to block me out. The afternoon dragged on. I stayed on the edge of the crowd. Every time Ronald laughed, I felt heat climb up my neck. I wanted to scream it right there, in the middle of the diaper cake and the finger sandwiches, but I couldn't. I didn't have a signed paper, just digital PDFs. I started thinking about the cash in my personal savings account. I needed to move it, but I had to figure out how much I could transfer without triggering an alert or starting a war before I had a lawyer. Around 4 o'clock, while Sarah opened gifts, I went to the restroom. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text alert from a credit monitoring app I'd secretly installed on my son's SSN that morning. I stared at my reflection in the mirror. He was doing it again. Even today, while we celebrated a new life, he was digging a hole for the ones we already had. I walked back into the party and saw Alicia whispering into Ronald's ear. He nodded with a small, tight smile, and then he looked at me. He didn't look away this time. He gave me a cold, blank expression I didn't recognize. I didn't say a word. I walked over to the gift table, picked up my coat, and left. As I walked to the car, my phone vibrated again. It was a text from Ronald. Staring at the screen, I stood there for a second. "Where are you going?" Sarah asked. She didn't ask if I was okay. She just wanted me back in the room. I didn't reply. Shoving the phone into my purse, I drove home through clouds of Texas dust. Gripping the steering wheel, I watched my knuckles turn white. I stepped into a silent house. Maya still had the kids. I heard the AC rattle. Ronald stood by the kitchen island with a beer. He didn't look surprised. Taking a slow sip, he looked at me with a blank face. "You left pretty fast," he said. He stayed behind the granite counter. I told him I got a credit alert. I spoke in a thin whisper. "On our son's social security number, now." Ronald sighed and looked at the ceiling. He set the beer bottle down with a soft clink. He told me I was overthinking things. I told him I wasn't overthinking a notification about a 10-year-old's credit line. He shifted his weight. He looked at me with cold eyes. He called it a glitch. He claimed the bank was updating something. I kept the iPad hidden. Showing my hand now would let him delete the evidence. I asked why it was happening. He told me to take a nap. Turning away to open the fridge, he cut me off. I watched his back for a minute. He looked relaxed. I remembered the for sale signs that had filled the neighborhood after the plant layoffs. Walking into the living room, I played a voicemail. A man with a clipped voice asked for the primary account holder. I replayed it 10 times. Searching for a company name, I found no proof in the recording. An hour later, Ronald took the kids into the backyard. I heard the ball hit his glove. Waiting for him to stay occupied, I went into the home office. I ignored the iPad at first. Sitting at the desk, I opened the laptop. I logged into our joint checking account. Scrolling through the last 3 months of transactions, I breathed shallowly. I scanned the grocery runs and electric bills. I checked the truck payments. Administrative fees added to the principal. Clicking the details, I frowned. I saw transfers moving from the joint account into a separate account. I saw the label payment processing. I traced the transfers back. Every time we had a surplus, I saw a few $100s move into that mystery account. Over 3 months, I saw the total reach thousands. Searching for the routing number, I found a third-party loan servicer in Delaware. I matched the numbers to the gap on my legal pad. Hearing a step in the hallway, I slammed the laptop shut. I pushed the computer away just as Ronald walked in. He smelled like grass and sunscreen. He stopped in the doorway. He asked what I was doing. I told him nothing. Standing up too quickly, I bumped the desk and told him I needed a stamp. He didn't move. He scanned the room before looking at the laptop. He noted that I had been spending a lot of time in there. I replied that I was just organizing things. I spoke in a pitch that was too high. He nodded once and walked toward the kitchen. I stayed in the chair. I remembered Maya's face from yesterday. She had seen a text on his phone. I saw the confirmation in her expression. Reaching into my purse, I pulled out my phone. I opened my banking app. I checked my personal savings. Calculating the risk, I wondered how much cash I could move. I saw a text from Alicia while I waited for the screen to load. She claimed Ronald told her I was unstable. She suggested a specialist for the sake of the children. I didn't reply. Watching the progress bar, I waited for my money to transfer. Money vanished from the joint view and landed in an account Ronald didn't know existed. My breath hitched, though my hands continued to shake. The monthly payment on his jewelry truck loomed in my mind. If he noticed the balance drop before Friday, the house would become a war zone. leaning against the office desk. My hip bumped a stack of folders while I stared at the text from Alicia. She was playing the specialist role again, claiming she did this for the children. I closed my eyes. In the hallway, the kids argued over a Lego set, their high voices oblivious. They had no idea their father used their social security numbers as a credit line to fund his ego. The house finally went quiet. Once the kids settled into their rooms, I remained in the office under the dim desk lamp. The loans were only the beginning. Because Ronald and Alicia coordinated their attacks on my mental state, I suspected something deeper. Opening the Drated Backups folder on the iPad, I scrolled through the loan PDFs. I had viewed them a dozen times, but this time I focused on the dates. Most of the payments to payment processing matched the high-interest cycles of predatory loans. Then, a transfer from last August caught my eye. A lump sum of $4,000 moved in a single afternoon, defying every loan schedule. That August stood out in my memory. Ronald's sister, Brenda, lost the baby that month. While the whole family acted devastated, Alicia played the part most intensely, practically moving into our guest room for a week to support us through the grief. Brenda stayed in her own house, claiming she couldn't face anyone, while Ronald spent long hours working late at the plant to avoid the house. A cold prickle hit the base of my neck. Searching the backups for other files from August, I found a scanned PDF of a receipt from a clinic in Houston. It wasn't a hospital, it was a private surgical center. Ronald W. Stevenson's name appeared on the bill, not Brenda's. The plastic chair creaked as I sat back. The date fell 3 days before Brenda announced her miscarriage. The document listed the procedure not as a complication, but as a termination. Replaying the voicemail from earlier, I listened until the audio started to degrade. A man's voice asked for the primary account holder. I had assumed it was a loan collector, but the tone sounded too professional, almost clinical. I played it again. In the background, a receptionist said, "Mr. Stevenson, we have the follow-up paperwork ready for the patient." My stomach churned. The miscarriage hadn't been a tragedy. It had been a cleanup operation. The door creaked open. Ronald stood there in a t-shirt and gym shorts, looking like a normal father. "You're still in here," he said. He stayed in the doorway and watched me. I left the iPad open with the receipt on the screen. "Why did you pay for Brenda's procedure in Houston, Ronald?" He didn't flinch. Instead, he sighed and rubbed the back of his neck, shifting his eyes toward the hallway. "I don't know what you think you're looking at," he said in a flat voice. "Brenda had a medical emergency. I helped her with the costs. It's family." "The receipt says it was a termination," I said. My voice sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. "And the date is before she told us she lost the baby." Ronald shifted his weight, his shoulder brushing the doorframe. "Things are complicated. Brenda was in a bad place. My mother and I just wanted to handle it quietly for the sake of the family." "Whose baby was it, Ronald?" He didn't answer. When his phone lit up with a notification, he looked down at the screen instead of at me. No one spoke for a long minute. "Honestly, Alexandria," he finally said, sounding breathless and annoyed, "this is exactly what my mother was talking about. You're digging through things that aren't your business. You're obsessing. It's not healthy." He turned around and walked away. Without an apology or a denial, he used the same script Alicia had sent in that text to dismiss me as unstable. I remained in the chair and listened to his footsteps fade. Property taxes were due next month, and for sale signs were popping up like weeds in the neighborhood as people got laid off from the plant. My son's identity had been sold off to pay for these lies. I couldn't afford to be a victim. Grabbing my phone, I took a photo of the receipt and the payment processing transfers. I emailed the images to a secure folder I'd set up with my cousin Sarah, labeling the email house records to avoid suspicion. Realizing Ronald could wipe the iPad if he suspected my discovery, panic flared. Since I didn't know how to password protect the folder, I tucked the iPad under a pile of old tax documents in the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. I locked the drawer and hid the key in a fake plant on the windowsill. My pulse thrummed in my throat. I needed a lawyer who understood financial fraud, not just a divorce attorney. As I walked out of the office, my phone buzzed. Alicia had posted a photo to the family group chat. She sat at a fancy brunch with some of Ronald's old colleagues from the plant, smiling with a champagne glass, looking like a pillar of the community. I didn't reply. Walking into the kitchen, I started scrubbing a pot that was already clean. I scrubbed until my knuckles turned raw, waiting for the house to go completely silent. Freezing water hit my hands as I scrubbed, trying to wake myself up before sitting down at the laptop. Instead of the big stuff, I targeted the memberships first. An hour passed while I kicked him off every account I paid for. Amazon, Netflix, the whole deal. Clicking through the lists, I erased him from the logistics of my day. I didn't want him using my saved cards for truck parts or whatever else he hid. The voicemail played in the back of my mind. A dozen replays of a 3-second clip from an unknown number, a woman's voice, one muffled word, and a click. Proof of Alicia's identity didn't exist, but the recording kept looping. 2 hours later, Ronald returned, frowning at his phone. He didn't look at me. My eyes stayed on my book when he asked what happened to the Amazon login. I changed it. Rubbing the bridge of his nose, he let out a long, loud sigh. I just need to order some gaskets for the dually. Just give it to me. Get your own account, Ronald. Maya, the 15-year-old babysitter, sat at the dining table. A text popped up on Ronald's phone, catching her eye. She glanced at me, then jerked her gaze away. I stood there for a second. Ronald stood there, chest heaving. He gave me that blank expression from the baby shower. Looking at him, I saw the tired lines on his face, and that smug look, as if he were the only adult in the room. I snapped. I told him to take his adult attitude and his dually and find someone else to pay for gaskets. Muttering about how I was becoming impossible, he turned toward the kitchen. He opened the fridge and slammed the door shut. The property tax bill arrived 3 days later. With plant layoffs hitting the neighborhood, house values shifted, but the taxes remained high. A calculator sat by my hand as I ran the numbers over and over. The mortgage and taxes alone outweighed my income, while I fought the legal battle over the kids' credit. Moving money required caution. I transferred small amounts, $500 here, $800 there, into a separate account. A lump sum would trigger a war before my paperwork was ready. I spent my nights checking the math, calculating exactly how much I could move without triggering an alarm. My lawyer was a shark. Ignoring the drama, she focused on the paper trail. We spent a week documenting every transfer to payment processing and the Houston clinic receipt. I archived every text Alicia sent about family unity or taking a walk to clear my head. One afternoon, Ronald leaned against the bedroom doorframe, watching me pack for Sarah's. He claimed his mother was worried about my breakdown and suggested a specialist. Folding a shirt, I stopped. I didn't look at him. The specialist who helps people stop seeing things that aren't there? He shrugged, claiming I was obsessing over things from months ago. Brenda is fine. The kids are fine. The kids have credit scores that look like they belong to 40-year-old gamblers, Ronald. His eyes darted to the suitcase as he shifted his weight. I'll handle it. I'll call the bank. Just stop this, whatever this is. I zipped the suitcase without answering. Paperwork and cold silences defined the separation. To avoid a shouting match in the driveway for the neighbors to see, I kept it quiet. My lawyer handled the filing. The discovery process revealed a nightmare of bank statements and predatory loan contracts. A real clue appeared in the Delaware documents. Ronald claimed the money was a long-term investment, but the transfer date contradicted the account opening date. When I pointed it out, he offered a half answer about a bank timestamp error. I wondered who actually managed the account. While Ronald met with buddies from the plant on Tuesday, I changed the locks. Skipping the note and the long text, I called the locksmith and swapped the deadbolts. Once I had the new keys, I set up mail forwarding to his mother's house. The new apartment is a 2-bedroom near the edge of town. Distance meant I didn't see for sale signs every time I turned a corner. There is no yard for the kids, and the carpet is a disgusting 90s beige. I spent the first night sitting on a packing box, listening to the hum of a cheap window AC unit. I pulled out the final lease agreement and looked at the signature line. My name stood alone. No cosigner, no Ronald. Setting the pen down, I looked at the kids' room, where they were already arguing over the top bunk. I didn't feel like a winner. I reached over and turned off the lamp. Thank you so much, Alexandria, for coming to us and sharing your incredibly harrowing journey. I can only imagine the weight you've been carrying. Discovering that Ronald W. Stevenson didn't just gamble with your children's financial futures, but was hiding such a devastating secret with Brenda. All while Alicia R. Harding worked so hard to make you feel like you were the one losing your mind. That level of coordinated gaslighting is absolutely toxic, and it takes immense strength to walk away from that. Even though she lifted her chin and said, even though she has the new apartment and the legal process is moving forward, Alexandria mentioned that she didn't feel like a winner as she turned off the lamp that first night. This leads me to a question for all of you. Do you think it's possible to truly win after a betrayal this deep? Or is simply surviving and escaping the toxicity the only real victory available? We want to hear your thoughts. What advice do you have for Alexandria as she navigates this new chapter and helps her children recover from Ronald's actions? Please leave your advice in the comments below. If you found this story powerful, remember to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more confessions. Thanks for watching.